In the last video, we explained polymorphism and started implementing this concept using duck typing. However, we know that in Python, to implement polymorphism, you have 4 ways. Duck typing, which we already covered, operator overloading, which we will cover today, and method overloading and method overriding, which we'll cover in future videos. Now let's start with operator overloading. If I gave you 1 plus 1, we know that both ones are considered operands and the plus operator is considered the operator, right? We also know that if you say hello plus world, you are concatenating 2 strings. So basically, you'll get the answer hello world. Let us say in my Python program, I'll create a num1 equal to 1, so a variable that stores the number 1, and num2 will also store number 1. And if I go ahead and say print num1 plus num2, it will return for me 2. However, I want you to know something in Python, that everything you do in Python is considered an object. So when you say num1 equal to 1, you are basically creating an object of type integer or int that holds the value 1. So there is a class called int or integer. My point here is, whenever you write num1 plus num2 or integer plus an integer, you're basically calling the following method. First of all, the class int, dot, and the add method, which is a magic method. And inside num1 plus num2, I will get 2 and 2, so basically the same answer. So behind the scenes, when you say num1 plus num2 or integer plus integer, you are calling this magic method called add. So I want you to remember, each time you say something plus something or integer plus an integer, you are calling the add method, which is inside the class int. Also, we have print int dot sub, and sub is for the minus operator. So num1, num2, so you're basically saying right here num1, let me write it as a comment, so num1 minus num2. I want you to keep this in mind and you'll see why I'm telling you about it. Let's go ahead and create a class called salary, and this class salary will have an init method which takes self and income as parameter. So self.income is equal to income. Okay, now let me create my object. I'm gonna name it job1. So salary, and let's say the salary of the first job is 12k, and the second object which is job1 and salary, let's say 13k. Okay, now I want to find the sum of those 2 jobs. So if I say print job1, let me say job1 plus job2, will this work? Well, let's see. Let me run my code and see. Well, no, it didn't. We got an error, unsupported operand types for the plus operator, salary plus salary. So basically, the plus operator is expecting an integer and an integer. Why? Because when you say something plus something, you're basically calling the int function, then the int class, then the method called add. This is a magic method, and you're saying a plus b. So a and b are of type integer, but here job1 and job2 are of type salary. So that's why we got this problem. Well, what we can do here is we can overload the plus operator by defining the add method or the magic method add inside our class. So what I would say is define or def add self and other. And this other represents an object. So when you say job1 plus job2, job1 is taken as arguments for the self parameter, job2 is taken as argument for the other parameter. Okay? So I'm going to say return self.income plus other.income. Let me write it correctly, and .income. So right now, let me go ahead and launch my code. We should get 25k, and we got 25k. Why? Because this time, instead of saying int.add, we are saying, let me delete it, salary.add. So we're calling the method or the magic method add that's inside the salary to find us the sum of those 2 jobs. And just what I explained earlier in this video. When you say job1 plus job2, you are basically calling salary.add a and b. Well, a and b in my case will be job1 and job2. Okay, so behind the scenes, when you say job1 plus job2, you're calling this magic method add, which is located inside the class salary. Now let's do the same thing but for the sub method. Let us say you earned a deduction on your first job, which is 2k, and you want to say print job1 minus deduction. Now this won't work because it's calling int.sub and a and b. We don't want that, we want salary.sub. How to do that? Well, we need to define the sub method inside our class salary. So def sub self and amount. And let's do return self.income minus amount. Okay, so self is job 1 and deduction is the amount. So let's see what will happen now. Will this work? Yes or no? And yes, it worked. We got 10k. So instead of saying int.sub, we are saying salary.sub. Why? Because we overloaded the minus operator. You can do the same thing for, let's say, the magic method mul, which stands for multiplication. You can do the same thing for div, which stands for division. And there's also the modulus or mod, which stands for the modulus operator. Okay, now we know how to overload these operators like plus, minus, multiplication, division, and mod. Can we do the same thing for the comparison operator, like the equal operator, the greater than, less than or equal to signs? Can we do the same thing for these operators? Well, let's see. Let me go ahead and let's say I want to compare. If job 1 equal to job 2, I want to say equal, well, let's say equal income, okay? So I will say equal income. And if job 1 greater than job 2, I will say print job 1 is greater than job 2. Or let's say job 1 is greater. And now else, well, let me just indent. So else, I will say print job 2 is greater. Okay? Now, will this work right now if I launch my code? Well, let's see if it will. Of course, it will not, because the operator greater is not supported between instances of type salary and salary. How can we fix this? Well, we need to overload these operators. So when you say job 1 equal to job 2, you are saying int, or we want it to say salary dot eq, which stands for equal, and job 1 job 2. How to do that? Well, we need to first define this method inside our class. So def eq, and let's say it will take self and other. Now it will return self.income equal to other.income, and let me write it correctly, and I wrote it correctly. So right now this actually works. It says salary.eq job 1 job 2. Now there's something that doesn't work here in our program, which is the greater than operator. So here it's just saying, and let me just comment this, I'm sorry, let me just comment this. Okay, so here it's not saying salary dot, and instead of eq, so for the greater than it is gt. Okay, so greater than. So to make this operation say salary dot greater than job 1 job 2, we need to define the gt function, or excuse me, method inside our class called salary. So def gt, and it will take self and other. Okay, and it will return self dot income greater than other dot income. And right now this operation is working perfectly fine. So if you want to see it in action, I will say here instead, I'll say salary dot and gt, let's say here, and let's say here job 1 job 2. Okay, so right now in my code, let me turn this into 12, so both of them are equal. Let's see what will happen. Equal income. Okay, let me say this time job 1 is greater, so we should get job 1 is greater. Will this work if job 1 is less than? So let's see, I should get right now job 2 is greater, and yes, we got it. So basically our program works. We overloaded it, the equal operator, the equality operator, and the greater than operator, which is this one. Now of course we have other magic methods than gt and eq. We have also ge, greater than or equal, le, less than or equal, and so on. You can always search them online if you wish to know them, but right now you can overload these operators because you know how to overload operators by defining the magic methods inside the class, and you're good to go. And this is it on operator overloading. I encourage you to explore more about magic methods and try to overload different operators. Other than that, subscribe and follow me to stay up to date with this Python object-oriented programming tutorial. And now I hope to see you in one of these videos that will appear right now.